Hello, everyone. My name is Eloisa Ramos, and I am here with my daughter, Sonia. Hi, Sonia, and my friend, Teresa. And we are studying the text of A Course in Miracles. Today, we are going to work on section 3 of chapter 11, From Darkness to Light. Okay, so paragraph 1. When you are weary, remember you have hurt yourself. Your comforter will rest you, but you cannot. You do not know how, for if you did, you could never have grown weary. Unless you hurt yourself, you could never suffer in any way, for that is not God's will for his Son. Pain is not of him, for he knows no attack, and his peace surrounds you silently. God is very quiet, for there is no conflict in him. Conflict is the root of all evil. For being blind, it does not see whom it attacks. Yet it always attacks the Son of God, and the Son of God is you. Okay, so we just finished section 2, which was the invitation to healing. And this is a continuation now, because in the previous section, we were, we were saying that any attack thought is a decision for the ego. And that healing is the invitation to the Holy Spirit to release all of the attack thoughts. So here it says that when you are weary, remember that you have hurt yourself. And so we can say that attack thoughts are hurtful. Okay, and they're hurtful because they are thoughts of separation, and they are thoughts of conflict and fear. And that let's see. And that's sickness because it is a loss of peace. Okay, not that we can really lose it, but we lose the awareness of it. So we lose the awareness of that inner peace that comes from God. So 2, your comforter will rest you. Okay, so peace is basically rest. And our comforter, that's another word for the Holy Spirit, will rest you. Okay, but you cannot. So we cannot do it for ourselves, because for ourselves means that we are identified with the ego or the body as a separate individual self. Okay, 3, you do not know how, for if you did, you could never have grown weary. Okay, that makes sense. Obviously, if we are weary, then we've done that. And if we have done that, it means that we could not have done it otherwise. And that's why we need help. And also, weariness is associated with attack thoughts because it's associated with judgment. And that's where conflict shows up. It's through judgment, because judgment splits, it puts one side what is acceptable and one side what is unacceptable, or what I reject. One side is positive, one side is negative. So the judgment splits it into opposites. And once you have opposites, then you conclude, well, there's opposition, and therefore there's conflict, and therefore there's fear. So, okay, so 4, unless you hurt yourself, you could never suffer in any way, for that is not God's will. Okay, so suffering does not come from God's will. That's not, God's will for us is not to suffer. It's our own doing. Okay, we hurt ourselves because we split our mind through judgment. So we split perception, and now we can perceive conflict, and now we can perceive attack, and now we can perceive that we can be hurt and that we can hurt others. And in those thoughts is where we hurt ourselves, because we have allowed the ego thought system into our mind now, and we are having an experience of separation, which is suffering. That's what sickness and suffering is. It's an experience of separation from our source, from love, from peace. Okay, so pain is not of him. Pain is not of God, for he knows no attack, and his peace surrounds you silently. So all of the thoughts of God are thoughts of unity, of oneness, of peace, of joy, of happiness. So they're all healing thoughts that undo the idea of separation, of conflict, of separate interests, of separate wills that can contradict and oppose and attack and, war with each other. So God is very quiet, for there is no conflict in him. And there couldn't be any conflict in him, capital H, because it's oneness. There are no separate parts to conflict. 7, conflict is the root of all evil. For being blind, it does not see whom it attacks. Okay. Yes. So the reason that conflict is blind is because it splits off into parts and into levels. And now it is, it's almost like splitting up consciousness into different pieces, and now they don't recognize each other, and therefore they don't recognize that they're attacking themselves when they're attacking another part, because the mind becomes so fragmented when it projects and dissociates that it does not recognize its own projections and its own dissociation. So it sees them as strangers and attacks them. You could almost think of it metaphorically like the autoimmune system, or think of it in like the metaphor for allergies, right? Okay. So you become allergic to something that is actually good for you. So you can become allergic to peanut butter. Peanut butter is supposed to be very healthy to the body, but the body cannot see that it's healthy for it. The body now sees it as an invader, as something that is harmful, and it will attack it. Okay, so that's what it means by being blind. It does not see whom it attacks, because it has lost the recognition that it's good and that it's actually support to it rather than attack. And so there's conflict there. And let's see. And so conflict would be the root of all evil, because it represents the belief that the mind is not whole. And that's the belief in darkness, basically. That's the block to the awareness of wholeness, of peace, of love's presence, which is the miracle and healing. Let's see. Yet it always attacks the Son of God, and the Son of God is you. Because there is no separation. So when the Course uses the term Son of God, it means one Son of God. It does not mean individual, separate parts as children of God. So So, because giving is receiving, if I attack you, I would just be attacking myself, the same Son of God. Yeah. But if I don't recognize the oneness, I will delusionally think that I'm attacking not me, not myself. um, because that's what the perception of separation says. It says, oh, I'm a body and you're a body, and we are different bodies because we don't look the same. So it does not recognize spirit as the true essential nature of what we are. Okay. Okay, number 2.
God's Son is indeed in need of comfort, for he knows not what he does. Believing his will is not his own. The kingdom is his, and yet he wanders homeless. At home in God, he is lonely, and amid all his brothers, he is friendless. Would God let this be real when he did not will to be alone himself? And if your will is his, it cannot be true of you, because it is not true of him. So could you say that not knowing what he does, not knowing what I do, believing his will is not his own, is just dissociation? Because I'm thinking of unhappiness, and I'm just trying to understand this through that, because it's saying believing his will is not his own. So whenever, like, for example, I feel unhappy, that would be just dissociating by separating my will from his will and not saying that it's the same, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I would feel lonely and depressed and friendless, because I'm believing that lie that says that I'm not with him.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
You're in time rather than time is in your mind.
Right.
Yeah. And so believing his will is not his own would mean that that we say, oh, things happen to me that I don't want,
Mm-hmm.
you know, or 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 I'm a victim to everything, to my environment. Because it's not recognizing that the power of the mind is what manifests everything that we see in the world. Let's see. So it would be disowning or dissociating from the mind. It would be kind of making the body as a doer of its, kind of just unconsciously doing things through conditioning from the past. I see only the past, right? And so when there is no conscious awareness of what I'm doing, it's all just past programming. It's almost like you don't know what you're doing until you're doing it. And then you say, or like, oh my God, why did I do that? What the heck was I thinking? That made me do that. Because the mind is it's almost like sleepwalking, it just goes about doing things without being in the present moment and being mindful of what it's doing. Um, yeah. Mm-hmm. So we've separated, we've dissociated so many parts of the self that it's almost like the right brain does one thing and the left brain does another thing, or there's like automatic impulses that you just automatically do with that's unconscious, or it's, or it shows up in habits or addictions that you feel you have no control over. Or let's see, what did I so something my son said, because he's working on quitting smoking, but he said, oh, it's like, I know that I don't want to smoke, but I do it anyway. Let me see, but it was something like, um, he says, my mind now recognizes that I really don't want to smoke, but so now I just try to do it faster to get it over with, so then I don't have to smoke. So he's in the process. His mind's becoming more aware of those habits and those patterns, but it can get a little crazy once you start seeing all of that confusion in there. So anyway, yeah. So, and if your will is his, it cannot be true of you, because it is not true of him. Yeah, so all those ideas about being alone in a world, of strangers, or being, he wanders homeless when the kingdom is his. So all of those are ego thoughts of saying you are separate in time, and you're surrounded by an environment that is in opposition to you. Everybody is in it for themselves, and it's a competitive dog eat dog world. So all those are ego thoughts. They're all attack thoughts. They're all separation thoughts. And they're not true, but that's what the ego thought system makes up, because um, those thoughts support the belief in separation. Yeah. And if that's what we invite into our mind, then that's what's going to be projected in the world, and that's what we're going to see. Or if we invite the thoughts of God, then we're going to extend forgiveness, extend love, and then have the witnesses show up in our experiences that demonstrate that love as the real world. Yeah. So number 4, would God let this be real when he did not will to be alone himself? Well, no, it's not real, but we believe it. So we think it's real. We can feel it's real. We can sense it's real. It's still not real. Okay. Number 3.
Oh, my child, if you knew what God wills for you, your joy would be complete. And what he wills has happened, for it was always true. When the light comes and you have said, God's will is mine, you will see such beauty that you will know it is not of you. Out of your joy, you will create beauty in his name, for your joy could no more be contained than his. The bleak little world will vanish into nothingness, and your heart will be so filled with joy that it will leap into heaven and into the presence of God. I cannot tell you what this will be like, for your heart is not ready. Yet I can tell you and remind you often that what God wills for himself, he wills for you, and what he wills for you is yours. That's a beautiful, hopeful paragraph.
It sure is.
Yeah, it's just basically saying, you know what? What God wills for you is yours, already is yours.
Yeah. Yeah, line 2, and has happened, for it was always true.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's almost like when that's why, a lot of the spiritual paths call it a dream, right? Because when 3, when the light comes, when you wake up from the dream and you have said, God's will is mine, you will see such beauty that you will not know it is not of you, that you will know it is not of you. It is not of our own making. So it is what God creates, reality. So yes, so we are in a dream, and the mind has not completely wakened. So the light is just waiting for us to invite it in, and because we decide, the mind decides when it's time to wake up. So so that's why it says over here, it says line 6, I cannot tell you what this will be like, for your heart is not ready. So the heart, the mind, our mind decides when it's ready, when it's had enough of the illusion, and it's saying, okay, that's it, been there, done that, and I'm ready to wake up. Yeah. And so the bleak world will vanish into nothingness. Number 5 there. And your heart will be so filled with joy that it will leap into heaven and into the presence of God. So that would be the healed mind. Okay, number 4, my turn. The way is not hard, but it is very different. Yours is the way of pain, of which God knows nothing. That way is hard indeed, and very lonely. Fear and grief are your guests, and they go with you and abide with you on the way. But the dark journey is not the way of God's Son. Walk in light and do not see the dark companions, for they are not fit companions for the Son of God, who was created of light and in light. The great light always surrounds you and shines out from you. How can you see the dark companions in a light such as this? If you see them, it is only because you are denying the light. But deny them instead, for the light is here and the way is clear. Okay. Yeah, so those dark companions are, a lot of them are darker emotions like grief, loss, fear. See up here, number 4, fear and grief are your guests, and they go with you and abide with you on the way. Those would be the dark companions there. And why see those? Why see those when the light can easily dispel them? And that's the miracle, because it's a change in mind. We go from the wrong mind, the false mind, to the right mind, where the light abides and can dispel the darkness. And so that dark journey is not the way. So the course is another way, because a lot of I want to say that there are some religions that really believe in suffering, and kind of taking the hard, that hard journey, that journey of pain. And this is teaching that that there's another way, and that God's will is for our perfect happiness, not for pain, not for sorrow, but for joy and peace. So it's reminding us that we are created of light and in light. And so to be in our right mind is to accept that as the truth, and not buy into the other thoughts that say that we are darkness and we are evil and we are, sin, guilt, and fear. Because those would be dispelled by the light and not there, not real. It would be the nightmare. Yeah. Because they deny the light. That's the thing. So sickness is a denial of the truth. Okay, number 5.
God hides nothing from his Son, even though his Son would hide himself. Yet the Son of God cannot hide his glory, for God wills him to be glorious, and gave him the light that shines in him. You will never lose your way, for God leads you. When you wander, you but undertake a journey that is not real. The dark companions, the dark way, are all illusions. Turn toward the light, for the little spark in you is part of a light so great that it can sweep you out of all darkness forever. For your Father is your Creator, and you are like him.
Mm-hmm.
I like number 3. You will never lose your way.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter like what I do or what I think. It doesn't matter how I think I'm backtracking or how many steps whatever I think I'm doing wrong or not good enough. It doesn't matter. I can't lose my way. So that's comforting.
It is. Yep. That 5, the dark and pain is the dark way are all illusions. Turn towards the light. And the lessons that we've been reading, right? Let's see, 92, miracles are seen in light, and light and strength are one. 93, light and joy and peace abide in me. So it's they're working with light. Light and joy and peace abide in me. My sinlessness is guaranteed by God. Let's see. So it's really emphasizing, let me not close my eyes. Miracles are seen in light. Let's see. Yeah. Miracles are seen in light. The body's eyes do not perceive the light, but I am not a body. What am I? So they're all reinforcing, the idea here that that we are created as light and in light. And therefore, that illusion can be dispelled as long as we follow the light. Yeah. So 6, turn towards the light, for the little spark in you is part of a light so great that it can sweep you out of all darkness forever. Okay. For your Father is your creator and you are like him. So there's no question, there's no doubt, there's no uncertainties. You see how the is and the are italicized there? Yeah, it's all certainty. And that in that certainty, we can put our trust and stand firm there. And that will be the light that will guide us through all of the seeming darkness. Okay, number 6.
The children of light cannot abide in darkness, for darkness is not in them. Do not be deceived by the dark comforters, and never let them enter the mind of God's Son, for they have no place in his temple. When you are tempted to deny him, remember that there are no other gods to place before him, and accept his will for you in peace, for you cannot accept it otherwise. Well, that's a key thought, that we have to accept his will in peace, as we cannot accept it otherwise. I mean, this is so wonderful because it's basically saying there really is no darkness. Don't be deceived by all of that. This is, I do have a question on one part. It says, for they have no place in his temple. What does that mean?
So the mind is a holy temple. The mind that serves
Mind is the temple.
Yeah, it's a holy temple. And so if we allow, for example, grief or any of the heavy, dark, thoughts that show up as, depression, unhappiness, upset, anger, all of that. If we allow them in, then we are bringing in darkness. Because remember that God's will is for our perfect happiness. And happiness is really a decision. Okay. The ego would say that no, that happiness is made and that happiness can be unmade depending on the circumstances of the world, or depending on our luck, or depending on what happens to us. Okay, but that happiness is not true happiness. That's more of excitement or pleasure, or getting what I want, or or worldly achievements, kind of a thing. So happiness comes from within, and if we choose to be happy, we're choosing love. It's the same thing when we choose to forgive. We are choosing we're choosing the miracle because we're choosing peace rather than conflict, rather than upset, rather than anger. So we are dispelling that darkness simply by deciding for God, for love. And therefore the mind is at peace, and it's healthy, and it's grateful. and gratitude is let's see, it's a recognition that we are not self-created, because it's a recognition that we are given everything that we have, and we are loved and cared for and lovable as we are created by the source of love, as love and light. Yeah. And so the children of light cannot abide in darkness, for darkness is not in them. So it's really the darkness, whenever we get into these dark moods, it's not that they're in us, it's that they're past memories that we hold on to. And those are the ones that we need to forgive the past and just let it go and choose peace. I'd rather have peace than this. So, because all of those are made up by thoughts, and they're made up by attack thoughts because, we go back to, oh, yes, I had all these bad things happen to me. And, I start feeling sorry for myself, and I start feeling victimized, and I start feeling, like entitled to justifying my anger and my attack thoughts. And so I hold on to them. And now my mind is really holding on to darkness rather than following the light. Okay, number 7. Is it my turn? I think so. Only God's comforter can comfort you. In the quiet of his temple, he waits to give you the peace that is yours. Give his peace that you may enter the temple and find it waiting for you. But be holy in the presence of God, or you will not know that you are there. For what is unlike God cannot enter his mind, because it was not his thought, and therefore does not belong to him. And your mind must be as pure as his, if you would know what belongs to you. Guard carefully his temple, for he himself dwells there and abides in peace. You cannot enter God's presence with the dark companions beside you. But you also cannot enter alone. All your brothers must enter with you. For until you have accepted them, you cannot enter. For you cannot understand wholeness unless you are whole. And no part of the Son can be excluded if he would know the wholeness of his Father. Okay, so the holy mind is the temple of God, and that's where the presence of God resides. And only a whole mind that is unconditionally loving can recognize, let's see, it can be aware of its true nature, of its true self that awaits it there. So only God's comforter can comfort you in the quiet of his temple. So the Course talks about the stillness, to go to the place of stillness and peace, and that's the holy temple. So to enter into the holy temple, the mind has to be clear of any unforgiveness, of any grievance, of any dark thought. And that's why it says it needs to be a pure mind. 6, and your mind must be as pure as his. Because God, who is unconditionally loving, recognizes only thoughts that are unconditionally loving, that belong to him, because those are the thoughts that he created. And that's what we are in truth. But when we don't recognize that, we are separating ourselves from that kingdom, from that holy temple. And that's why we don't enter, even though it's still within us. Yes, so 6, and your mind must be as pure as his, if you would know what belongs to you. because we basically disown the kingdom, even though that's what we are. We're disowning our true identity in God. Let's see. And it's only because we have not done our forgiveness work, basically. So, and we want to exclude, somebody because they're undeserving of love. And so when we judge people that, quote unquote, have hurt us, it's because we have not recognized that what my brother did never happened. It's all with my consent. And so, the lesson is always that I'm not separate. We are one. And the forgiveness piece is basically the solution to the problem of separation, because that's the only problem that brought us here, quote unquote, in time. Because that's the belief that says that we're an ego in a body and that we are in time, which is the illusion, which is what needs healing and dispelling by the light. So, yeah, so you cannot understand wholeness unless you are whole, and no part of the Son can be excluded if he would know the wholeness of his Father. So a lot of times we want to really judge people, and we want to say, well, there's people that are evil and there's people that don't deserve, love. And so I'm not going to forgive them. I'm going to hold them, I'm going to say that they're not as holy as someone else. So once I start judging and separating God's creation, I'm putting myself in a position of thinking that I know what I don't know. And if God's not going to judge because God is unconditional love, then who am I to judge? So, yeah. Okay, number 8. Sonia, I think it's your turn.
In your mind, you can accept the whole sonship and bless it with the light your Father gave it. Then you will be worthy to dwell in the temple with him, because it is your will not to be alone. God blessed his Son forever. If you will bless him in time, you will be in eternity. Time cannot separate you from God if you use it on behalf of the eternal.
Mm-hmm.
So in number 4, when it says you will bless him in time, it's talking about our brother, right? If you basically forgive your brother in time, you will be in eternity.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's his Son with a capital H and S. So it's basically the forgiveness of the world, because we tend to want to judge superficially, based on what people do, their behavior and everything. But we do that because we perceive separate selves, separate individual selves, and that's not true. That's an illusion. Okay. So my brother is not separate from me. And if I'm judging and saying, well, he's undeserving of love. He's, not deserving of God's love, of going to heaven, or he's deserving of condemnation and attack and punishment or whatever. Then what I'm saying is that that there's separation for one, because everyone is not the same. Okay. And I'm also saying that God is partial, that God's love is conditional. So I am misperceiving and misunderstanding the love of God, and therefore I'm going to misunderstand and misperceive myself. and see myself as a split mind that can be good or bad, that can change how God created himself. And therefore, I'm going to believe that I'm self-created, which means that I have just denied the truth and my mind is sick because I have just denied that my Father is the creator. So time, while we believe we are in time, and while we believe we are a body and have a separate individual identity, we want to use it for the healing of the mind, and it is through the function of forgiveness and the practice that we begin to undo all of the beliefs in separation until we can let go of the idea of time itself, because we're eternal beings of love and light, so time itself is not real. Yeah. Okay. All right. So any questions? From darkness to light. And, so from darkness to light is really not a change. It's a restoration of the truth in our mind. So it's the end of the detour to fear. The Course calls it a detour into fear. It's an undoing of illusions. So it's really not a doing, because to undo illusions is not to do anything. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, okay. Anything, Teresa, before we stop? No, you always have really good questions afterwards.
Should I have some right now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if not,
I think one of the things about this last paragraph that was of interest to me is that time cannot separate you from God if you use it on behalf of the eternal. Sentence 5. So how I'm looking at that is that we perceive that we are in time right now in this world, but that is not, it will not separate us from God if we are operating on his behalf.
Yes.
So essentially, if we allow his light to shine through us in a
Yes.
healing and loving and forgiving way, then we have dispelled time.
Yes, because remember that the miracle, so if we allow the miracle to shine through, right, through forgiveness, okay, that itself saves time, thousands of years.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're undoing time. We're going back to the original error to be released. Yeah.
I think the hardest part for me as a person is the concept of not judging.
Yes. Yes, because it's so automatic. We've
It
done
is.
a pretty good job of training ourselves.
It is. I mean, even when you look at someone and you see how they're dressed, you're making a judgment about it.
Yes, it's already kind of built into seeing with the body's eyes. It kind of just happens, quote unquote, automatically. That's what we were reading about before, right? That the will that is not my own. My eyes have the will of their own. Yeah. Yeah. So it does, it takes a lot of patience with yourself, and just notice, how that's all working. Yeah. And then give it to the Holy Spirit for release.
And the other thing that's really comforting is the idea that, I mean, truly, there is no darkness. That's an illusion. That all of that is self-created, self-generated. We only really hurt ourselves.
Yes.
Which means ultimately we need to take responsibility for all of that and start trusting God and the Holy Spirit in order to live in the light.
Yes, we need to take responsibility for it because we're the ones that made fear, and fear is darkness. And then we need to be able to look at it with the light, to dispel it, which is, the right mind, the Holy Spirit. Because otherwise we we hide the darkness, but darkness you cannot really hide darkness. You know what I'm saying? And also, earlier in I think it was chapter 1 or chapter 2, it talked about how some terms do not lend themselves to opposites. And so light is one of those, because we tend to think that light and darkness are opposites, but they're not. Darkness has no reality of itself. It is simply the result, even in the world of illusion. Okay, when you have darkness, it is simply because the light has been blocked, right? So when you think of nighttime, it's because the earth is blocking the sunlight. It's in between the sun, and it's on the other side of the earth. So the darkness itself is not anything in and of itself. As soon as the earth rotates, there's the sun, there's the sunlight. So the darkness is a shadow when when the light gets blocked. And so the light is always in our mind. It is the awareness of the light that gets blocked, not that the light itself has been, gotten rid of from our mind. The light is always there. But the awareness of it is what we use to, like a curtain, to cover a window. We can be aware or unaware, mindful or unmindful. We can close the mind or open the mind to the ideas that we invite or we don't invite. So that's what a closed and an open mind does. It says, I am willing to change my mind and listen to this idea, or forget it. I'm not even going to hear what you're telling me, because I am closed to those ideas and I'm protecting my own beliefs because I don't want to change them. Yeah. And so we do that with each other. We do that when we read the Course, you can notice the resistance as you're reading. You'll come to something that, one sentence, and you're just like, you just go blank. It just doesn't go in at all. And you have to come back and reread it and reread it and reread it. But it's good to notice that, because then you can see where the resistance is, and you can sort of target those specific ideas that you're blocking because they're very threatening to the ego. We also do that when you think about your the people you associate with. Okay, you will want to. We tend to surround ourselves with people that validate our own beliefs and our own way of thinking and our own point of view, precisely because we're protecting those ideas from being challenged, because we don't want to see it another way. Okay, but when the suffering gets bad enough, the mind starts looking for solutions elsewhere, because it has not found comfort, because it can't comfort itself. So it has to start opening the mind, and asking for help, whereas before it wouldn't. And that's that little willingness that the Holy Spirit accepts and is able to bring the light in to help us find another way. Yeah. So it's not that, we need suffering or we need pain to heal the mind, but we tend to protect those ideas to the point where the suffering becomes unbearable. And then we're kind of forcing our own hand to opening our mind, because it's no longer tolerable. So that's why we pick the mind decides when it's time to let go of it. And since it's about time anyway, and time is not real, you know, if you want to come back a few lifetimes, that's okay. There's no, there's no, it's all an illusion anyway. But definitely once you start recognizing the truth, you begin to see the urgency and letting the all the ego thought system go, because I forget where it says that the mind becomes more and more sensitive to those thoughts. So it becomes less and less of a it's not so tolerable anymore to entertain any of the ego thoughts, because we hurt ourselves. That's what we started with, the yeah. When you are weary, remember you have hurt yourself. Paragraph 1, line 1. And your comforter will rest you, but you cannot. So we look for our comforter, which is the Holy Spirit. Yeah. So that we can rest in peace. Yeah, and live a happy dream, because that's the will of God. That's the thought system that we can extend even in the world that was made to hide to hide from God. We can bring the light into the world. Yeah. Okay. So anything else? No. Oh, is that good, Teresa? Yeah. Okay.
I do have another question, but it might not be so pertinent. The idea of we choose the people that we associate with because they have a same or similar belief system.
Yes.
So is the suggestion here that we move beyond that and not stick with people that are like ourselves, but move beyond that?
Well, that would naturally happen once you start becoming aware.
Ah.
Yeah, of the thoughts that you are protecting. It would naturally happen, or it would mean that that you let's see. It would mean that it would be an opportunity to forgive. You could use that situation as an opportunity to forgive, because and once you've done your forgiveness work, then it's possible, you're going to move on, or they're going to move on, because you've kind of learned the lessons that you need to learn with the people that were there. But generally speaking, when we're in our ego, we look for people that will reinforce what we are protecting. But on the spiritual path, we will also begin to recognize what we're doing, and that's not in our best interest, that's not in our highest good, and be more open, because ultimately, that's just special love. So we want to be recognizing the oneness of everyone, which is unconditional love. So we wouldn't have, the special cliques and the, when you think of the, high school, you go down the hall and there's all these little groups of teenagers just hanging around in different places. Just separating by whatever, um, so you wouldn't have that need to identify with one particular small group. You could still recognize the you would still feel completely comfortable in a group that was quote unquote, completely different from you, ethnically, social, economic, gender, sexual orientation, all of that. That would not be any kind of discomfort or feeling weird or feeling like, oh, I don't belong, or I'm, different, or they're different. There would not be any of that. You would be relating from a much deeper place where there are no differences. We're all the same, regardless of, preference, ethnicity, country of origin, skin color, all of that becomes not insignificant to Holy Vision, who perceives, the Son of God as the same, holy, innocent, one creation. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so wherever we go, we are at home, whether you're visiting a foreign country or you're visiting, quote unquote, the other side of town or whatever. There, you we belong everywhere. We belong everywhere because we are everywhere. We are everyone. We are the same. Yeah. So we would feel at home with anyone. And it's a really beautiful thing. We went just to walk around and get out in the sun. We were at the flea market here, and it's a really beautiful thing to just be able to come in contact with people and just talk to them like you've known them all your life, and not see them as strangers at all, and just feel comfortable and just enjoy being around nature, life, the variety of cultures, and just to be able to relate and connect with everyone that you meet. Yeah. And that's a blessing, that's a blessing because I think those are holy encounters that are reminders of the truth that we are not separate. We're just one. So, okay. Okay, so anything more? Yeah. All right. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Until next time. All right, bye-bye.